Good morning and welcome to the third meeting of the committee, City of Edinburgh Council Portobello Park Bill Committee. My name is Siobhan McMahon, I'm the convener of the committee, and I welcome you all in the gallery for this committee meeting. This is likely to be a shorter meeting than originally scheduled due to the accommodating request from some objector groups to change the date of their evidence session. Our updated timetable is available on our webpage, and we do not foresee any further changes to that timetable. The first item on the agenda is to consider whether to review this evidence heard at today's meeting in private at the end of the session, and to also review in private evidence heard at future meetings at the end of the respective sessions. Are members agreed to that? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 2 is to move to the oral evidence, and I welcome the witnesses representing objectors from Group 5, which consists solely of objection 17 on behalf of golfers who use Portobello Golf Course. Witnesses are Ulla Jones, lead objector for Group 5, past captain and current committee member of the Portobello Ladies Golf Club, and Maureen Wood, past captain and current treasurer of Portobello Ladies Golf Club. Welcome. I also welcome witnesses representing the bill promoter, City of Edinburgh Council. These are Ian Strachan, Principal Solicitor, Legal Risk and Compliance, City of Edinburgh Council, Charles Livingston, Associates and Brodies, and Ian Alexander, Design Director, GM Architects. The committee appreciates that for some this will be an unfamiliar situation. It might therefore be helpful if I set out how this session will be run. The lead objector and Promoters League spokesperson will be responsible for coordinating the evidence from the respective parties. I will first invite the objector's lead representative to provide a brief opening statement, setting out the points that the group intends to explore in detail during its evidence. A maximum of 10 minutes will be allowed, but we would encourage all speakers to be as concise as possible. I will ask the promoter if they have any initial questions or comments. The objectors will have the opportunity to explore their concerns in detail. I will indicate when we feel we have had enough evidence on each topic. The promoter will have an opportunity to cross-examine the objector witnesses. The roles will then be reversed. The promoter has an opportunity to make a brief opening statement. The objectors will be asked if they have any initial questions. The promoter will explore its evidence in detail. The objectors will have an opportunity to cross-examine. The committee will primarily be listening to the evidence, but members may raise a question for clarification at any point in the proceedings. Once we reach the end of the session, there will be an opportunity for each party to make a brief closing statement. The committee is grateful to both parties for providing their written submissions for this evidence session. So we'll now move to the formal evidence session, and the Group 5's objections relate to pupil safety, potential disruption to games of golf by pupils, drainage problems and flooding, parking, and loss of common good protection for the course. I now invite Ulla Jones, as the lead objector for Group 5, to provide an opening statement, maximum of 10 minutes.
Good morning, Convener. We won't need 10 minutes for this opening statement, as we want to go over our evidence in depth later. I'm Ulla, this is Maureen. We're both on the committee of Portobello Ladies Golf Club. Maureen will cover objections 1 to 2 and 4, and I will do 3 and 5. I want to say that I'm very disappointed that neither Billy McIntyre nor anyone from the Children and Families Department is here today to answer our questions, with respect to the gentleman at the other end. I've made a personal sacrifice in coming today, as I had already booked to travel to a funeral down south of a good friend, but I cancelled my arrangements because I felt it was more important to argue our case before this committee. However, we might as well have made written objections and saved ourselves the stress of appearing here today. I'm surprised that the Children and Families Department could not find anyone to replace Mr McIntyre, and this only adds to our feeling that they treat any objectors with disdain. And that's the end of our opening statement.
Thank you for that. I mean, obviously that is for the council to decide, but there were circumstances out with his control, and the committee agreed to that. But certainly, if the promoter wishes to come back on that point, yes.
Well, I was going to cover it in my opening statement, actually. But yes, unfortunately, Billy was due to attend today. He his own personal circumstance, probably, unfortunately, a family bereavement. He's unable to be here today. He would dearly have wished to. And he's asked that I pass along to yourselves and the committee his sincere apologies for not being able to be here. So apologies for that.
Anybody else to cover his absence?
But unfortunately, by the time that it came around, and obviously we'd already intimated to the Parliament who was going to attend today, we felt that it was, in the circumstances, suitable for us three to instead represent the council today.
Well, I hope the points that are raised can be answered, and if not, then we will seek written submissions for you on the points that can't be answered. If we move specifically to the 5 objections, and number 1, pupil safety first, please.
Right, my name is Maureen Wood. Further to our objections 1 and 2 regarding the likelihood of injuring pupils, injuring pupils, interrupting play, we wish to stress to the committee that the building process of the school and the presence of the school so close to the course will greatly affect our amenity. We foresee pupils injured by stray balls, our play interrupted, and increased vandalism on the course. Duddingston Golf Club, as you may know, suffered for a number of years from the same interruptions and vandalism from pupils from Holyrood High School using the course as a shortcut. However, with a school of 1,400 pupils adjacent to the course, there will be a high risk of pupils roaming onto the course, especially at dinner time and at the end of the day. The school would like pupils to stay in at dinner time, but it has no control over them, and once they leave the premises. New travel patterns will be established if the school moves to the park. Pupils crossing the Hope Lane railway bridge will then make a straight line across the course to the southwest corner entrance to the school. The council's failure to recognise even a possibility of this happening is symptomatic of their willful ignoring of anything that does not fit in with their plan. Too often during the past 8 years, it has buried its collective head in the bunker.
That covered objections 1 to 2 together, Convener. Yes.
Motor, have any response?
I've nothing at this point. I propose to deal with it in those points when we get round to our own statements.
You have nothing to say to the points that have just been raised? I explained the format of the meeting before we started. Yeah. Okay. Objections would be raised and the promoter would come back on certain things.
Okay. Yes. No. Thank you. I'm happy to do that. We note that the objectors suggest that they foresee pupils being injured by stray balls and their play being interrupted by pupils crossing the course. Safety issues might potentially arise if pupils were to habitually cross or walk on the course. This objection, therefore, we believe is closely linked with the objection about possible disruptions to games. The Council are, of course, greatly concerned to avoid any safety issues, and we are very confident in the proposed risk mitigation measures. I wonder if it might help at this point if we produce a couple of plans which we thought would be helpful today. And I believe you've got copies yourselves. The first plan, sorry, Ian. The first plan shows the area which will be covered by the bill, the area outlined in red there to the south of the golf course. The second is an Edinburgh Leisure poster showing the course layout. This poster was produced for the consultation exercise carried out by Edinburgh Leisure in July 2011, which we understand the golf club was consulted, and shows the minor changes proposed to the course as a result of the proposals connected with the school. It can be seen that from the bill plan there that there will be no entrance or exit from the school grounds on the north side of the school site. Further, the north side of the golf course, as can be seen here, is bounded by Stanley Street and the railway line. There will therefore be no part of the school site from which cutting across the golf course would be a shortcut compared to exiting the school site onto Park Avenue, Hope Lane or Milton Road, whichever best fits the pupil's direction of travel, and then using streets or paths bounding the course if necessary. An entrance was originally proposed on the north side of the school grounds, but this was removed as a result of this concern being raised during the original planning consultation process in 2011. The school will be good neighbours to the golf course and others in the area and takes its responsibilities for this very seriously. It is proud of the responsible behaviour and good citizenship shown by its pupils and will deal swiftly and firmly with any issues which arose regarding the golf course. In connection with the points raised for Duddingston Golf Course and Holyrood High School, From speaking with the head teacher there, we understand there have only been some very isolated incidents over the years, and in fact the school being a good neighbour to the golf course is illustrated by them doing a litter pick on the golf course. So that's all I wish to say in connection.
Would you like to come back? Yes, Maureen?
Your suggestions that the vandalism and trespassing on Daddingston Golf Club was minor. I worked at Daddingston Golf Club in the office for 27 years, and I can assure you it was not minor. They frequently removed flagpoles from the holes and inserted them in greens anywhere they liked. They scuffed up the bunkers. They were also in danger of being hit. Now, it's a much longer course than Portobello, and much better players, I may say. They hit the ball harder. These pupils almost dared you to hit your ball. And when you say that the only exit will be on the south side, fine. But they have to find their way down to Portobello, and they will cross the course to go to Hope Lane Bridge. I've seen it. I know it'll happen. It's not just an issue of it may not happen, it probably will. Okay?
And further to the danger, the fence protecting passers-by from danger, I'm quite a good golfer, though I say it myself. And my home club is St Andrews these days, rather than Portobello. Well, I play on Portobello as well. But I have frequently hit those trees on the left from the second tee. And I can see myself hitting over that fence. I hit a high ball. It's a short hole. And I can foresee danger happening there.
Well, if we take the point about safety, which is, of course, a very important point and one we need to cover. If we take the plan of the golf course, I believe that you can see that the only hole where a stray ball might be likely to reach the school site would be the third hole, which goes approximately along there. At that point, if you look at the other plan with the Bill Committee, it can be seen that the playground in the school is some distance away from that, and any stray drive would be extremely unlikely to reach there. It would, in any event, be protected by planting along that boundary, which would be reinforced, and a 2.4 metre high fencing to the north there. The pitches, the new 3G pitches, would have 3 metre high ball stop fencing with 5 metre high fencing at the goal ends. The Council is confident that these measures are appropriate and sufficient to manage the concerns raised. We would be very happy to engage with any concerned parties who believe otherwise. However, we don't believe the objectors have produced any proposals or suggestions for other mitigation measures that they believe would be more appropriate. And I would again reiterate that if, which we don't believe will happen, but if there were behavioural concerns with the children, then the school would very firmly deal with that, because that would not be appropriate, it would not be permitted, and the Council would not wish to be associated with that.
Could I?
Sorry, if I bring in Charles Livingston, then I'll come back to you.
If I could just add one more point on the travel from the school. So the railway, the bridge from Hope Lane that's being referred to is here. There is also, which doesn't appear on this plan, but Stanley Street continues to the northwest. One can then turn onto Southfield Place, and there's then a tunnel underneath the railway and underneath Sir Harry Lauder Road. That tunnel continues to a crossroads at Portobello High Street. So in terms of accessing the Portobello town centre, the railway bridge is not the only means of access, and if anything, the Southfield Place, Brighton Place tunnel is possibly a more likely avenue for pupils who are wanting to go to the town centre, to the shops at lunchtime or whatever the concern is. So this is certainly not the only means of accessing Portobello High Street and crossing the railway line. So if a pupil wants to travel if you imagine, to this area of Portobello, then the logical exit would be out of the east side of the site, up Hope Lane and over the bridge. If they want to travel to this area, the logical exit would be either out the south or out the west side, up here and then under the tunnel.
Bring in Ola Johnson and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I would just like to say that if the promoter thinks that the children will just process neatly down that route and not find the golf course a lure as they go home in the evening full of beans after school, then they're living in cloud cuckoo land, and the school has very little control over the pupils once they've left the premises.
Thank you. Mr Strachan first and then...
I was just going to say further in connection with safety concerns. Currently, this area is openly accessible to the public as a park. We're not aware of any risk to park users, so why should it be for the school? And when we also remember that the golf course has, of course, been there for a considerable period of time. Members of the public already use the perimeter paths down the side of the course. They currently have no protective separation from the course. And in fact, our proposals would make it safer, as there will be new fencing down the east path, which will offer better protection for the public and pupils who use the path next to the course. I just felt that was worth highlighting as well.
Mr Livingston, just before I let you in, can I ask the people in the gallery to refrain from comment, because it is quite off-putting when we're hearing the comments as well. Mr Livingston?
Just simply on the point of pupils' direction of travel, the point that I was making about the two means of crossing the railway line is that crossing the golf course is not a shortcut for any pupils. That's the point. If they live to the north east, then the logical route, the shortest route, would be out of the east side of the site and over the railway bridge. If they live to the northwest, the logical route is out of the west side of the site or the south side. And perhaps we can show where the main entrance is on this plan.
There's four entrances actually. There's one here, one here, one here, and one in the middle of the main entrance.
So for pupils who live to the northwest, the shortest route would be to exit from the main entrance or from the west side of the site up here, and then using the tunnel under the railway bridge and the road.
The directors have anything else?
Sorry, I would just like to say that with regard to the people who use the path at the moment, there are very few of them, and when if the school gets built there will be 1,400 people walking up and down at least those paths every day, which is a considerable difference in incidence of safety.
Well, I mean, 1,400 is I understand, the capacity of the school. I don't think that automatically follows that 1,400 people will be using that path. And also, these fences would be 3 metres high. There's no protection there at the moment. There will be protection.
Thank you. I think that concludes objections 1 and 2. So if we move on to objection 3, please, which is the drainage problems and the flooding. And Ulla Jones, please.
Thank you. In order to accommodate the school on the higher part of the park, there will be a great deal of excavation work to sink the school into the ground and reduce the overall visual impact. This will affect the natural underground watercourses that have become established. The park's higher than the golf course, and groundwater naturally flows from the park to the course. After any disturbance by excavation, it takes many years for these natural watercourses to re-establish, and there is a substantial risk that the golf course will suffer flooding over the 2 years construction phase should the bill be carried out, and also over the following 5 years that it will probably take for the natural drainage to stabilise. There's also a risk that in this stabilisation process, the natural discharge of surface and groundwater will result in ponding and waterlogging the fairways and, more seriously, the greens. There's ample evidence of the susceptibility of the golf course to changes in groundwater flows and drainage, provided when the retention tanks were sunk into the course on the northern boundary some 10 or so years ago. A large pond already forms, we sent you a photograph, on the short par 3 9th hole, along with very soggy conditions on other holes, and the effect of worse drainage was noticed in the reduction of golfers using the course immediately after the tanks were constructed. The more extensive disruption proposed by building on the park is likely to have a greater effect than the less disruptive retention tanks. While we accept that the Council intend to provide a sustainable urban drainage system with the proposed building, there's no certainty that this will not permanently affect the golf course. And if excessive water flows from the development, it's unlikely that this will be easily proven as being the fault of the construction, and the Council is unlikely to carry out remedial work. The Council states in their comments to this committee that the contractor will be responsible for any sustainable drainage. It seems strange, as it's not a design and build contract, but one where the Council has carried out all the design work. They should be asked to clarify which party is responsible for surface water and groundwater design and management. The probable increase in flooding will diminish our enjoyment of play to the extent that golfers will choose other courses. Coupled with the problem we've already identified of disrupted play due to pupils using it as a shortcut or recreation area, loss of income due to reduction in play will lend weight to any argument to close the course. As well as the threat of development, from 2006 the golf course was under threat of closure due to a cut in council funding to Edinburgh Leisure, the arm's-length body which manages sports facilities for the council. This will lead to a serious reduction in amenity to local residents and reduce accessibility to a sports facility. We believe that part of the reason that profits have reduced is that Edinburgh Leisure have moved the starter to a position where he can't identify the golfers who have not paid for their tee times. Falling income will increase the course's vulnerability. And also, our club has suffered a decline in applications which we ascribe to the 8-year planning blight since the council first made their plans public. Although golf club membership has reduced everywhere following the recession, Portobello is the cheapest course around, and it's used by a wide range of social class groupings.
Mr. Strachan?
Yeah, I guess it seems to me there's sort of two elements there. There's the drainage, which I'll make a couple of comments and hand over to my colleague Ian Alexander, and then there's comments about closure and viability of the course, so we'll come back to that after the drainage, if that's okay. As regards drainage concerns, our written submission contained links to information submitted as part of the planning process, and we would wish to stress that this issue was fully considered in the planning process, and as has been said, a surface water management plan will be put in place as a condition of that process. I wonder if I could pass over to Mr. Alexander. It would be helpful if you could give a bit more information about that.
Yes, indeed. During the statutory processes, i.e. the planning process, there's three things that have to be presented and ratified. One is a flood risk assessment, the second is a drainage impact assessment, and the third is a sustainable urban drainage design and a drainage plan. And furthermore, during the operations on site, the contractors have to put in a management strategy for the site, a water management plan to prevent water risk from all sources, including a 1 to 200 year runoff, happening onto any adjacent properties. This is a standard process across Scotland. The whole principle is really to do with attenuation on site, retaining as much water on site and controlling water egress into surrounding drainage patterns, i.e. ditches, burns, surface water drainage that's underground, etc. So we believe that under the strategy process and with the design team and understanding what the council's requirements are for the site, we have designed something which will perform.
Talk about surface water all the time. Now, I'm not an expert on drainage. I had to take advice when I made that objection. But it seems to me that underground water is different from the natural underground water courses are different from the surface water, and I can see that they will become a problem when the school is sunk down into the ground.
All I can really say to that, without getting into too much technical detail, is that the engineers for the site, our structural engineers and ground engineers, have looked at the groundwater conditions on the site and the conditions that will be imposed by the new building, and made a design that will respond to those circumstances.
It may take some time for this to settle itself, and meanwhile we'll have to live with a problem which you have caused.
I don't think the design would want to create a situation of risk for the community or for the users of the site, and we believe we have a system that will perform on the site and satisfy those situations.
Mr. Strachan?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency were, of course, as is usual, also consulted as part of the planning consultation. I don't believe they had any concerns over risk to adjacent properties such as the golf course. I know that the objectors, including a photo of a flooded area, if I may find my photo, in their written submission, that is approximately up there. And of course, the school is to the very south of the area. And I would reiterate what previously said, that we are confident that any flooding or drainage issues the course might otherwise experience would be appropriately mitigated, and no detail has been produced as to why it is believed that this would not be the case.
I hope that your confidence is justified. That's it, thank you.
Okay. If we move now on to objection number 4, parking and... Sorry.
Mrs Jones also covered course closure.
Okay, do you want to?
Yeah.
Yep.
Should we
Okay.
do that
Sorry,
now?
we'll come back.
This was a new issue. This wasn't covered in the original objection relating to suggested potential closure or viability of the golf course. The course has been identified and managed by Edinburgh Leisure on behalf of the council. This is unrelated to the bill or the project to build the new school. However, it's been suggested that the golf club has suffered a decline in applications ascribed to the council's proposals and planning blight, which they say has resulted since these proposals were first publicised. The council would not wish to speculate why any decline in applications has arisen, but we note that the objectors have produced no evidence supporting their claim. We would, however, wish to highlight that this is a public, not a private golf course. People can use the course by paying per round or buying season tickets. Unlike most private courses, club membership is neither a prerequisite to play the course nor a method of reducing the fee paid. It is difficult to understand how the proposals for the park could be directly linked to a decline in member numbers. On the point of usage, having the high school next door might well contribute to an increase in the usage of the course. The objectors themselves describe the course as being, and a quote from their written submission, easily accessible, cheap to play on, a wonderful course for children and adults to learn on. We believe the new location will make the course more visible and likely to be much greater interest in using it. The school is also very keen to develop a positive and mutually beneficial relationship with the golf course.
Any comment?
I'll come to that later in another objection, if that's all right.
Okay, that's fine. If we move on to number 4 then that's parking, and back to Maureen Wood, please.
Right. Further to our objection 4 regarding car parking and increased traffic flows, we are concerned that increased car use in the vicinity as a result of a school of 1,400 pupils and staff being located on the park will lead to golfers being unable to park near the clubhouse. Those travelling to the school from the north are very likely to park in Stanley Street rather than face the traffic queues which will inevitably occur on the very restricted access roads, example, Park Avenue and Hope Lane. Access to the school site from the west will be problematic, as traffic will have to queue to enter the site across eastbound traffic. This will result in more cars being parked around the golf course by motorists wishing to save time. Indeed, should the roads adjacent to the park be full, there is nowhere else nearby for golfers to park. And we may find ourselves unable to make times for games, and some of us may have to carry clubs a great distance. Portobello Golf Course, as you say, is easily accessible, cheap to play on, a wonderful course for children and adults to learn on, and older, less able adults to enjoy its flat, short fairways too. I may say I waited a very long time to become a member of Portobello Golf Course, partly because I was still working. When I joined, slap bang, as I retired, I get this, that we may lose our course. And I have to say, that's why I'm fighting very hard to keep it, because I'm one of the less able adults who like to play it. That's my objection.
Thank you.
Firstly, just a point to pick up on there from Mrs Wood, there is no plans to close the course. So I would just wish to cover that. The question of parking was covered in our written submission. If we take the Edinburgh Leisure poster again, actually, You can see that the first and last holes are on Stanley Street, as are the clubhouse and the starter's office. Golf course users are very likely to park there. Clearly, that's on the other side of the golf course from the school site. And as such, parking up there would be very inconvenient for school users. We'd also highlight that school has provision for 117 on-site dedicated parking spaces for staff and visitors. We believe it would be extremely unlikely to create any competition for parking spaces on Stanley Street, which we understand to be unrestricted and generally ample in any event. Mr Alexander, could you say anything about the suggested traffic impact?
There's been a traffic impact assessment carried out for the site, which is slightly tangential to the main question here. We have looked at, there's been a survey carried out of how people arrive at the school. Most people walk and take public transport. There's very little drop-off actually around the school. That was carried out by the council and fed into our processes for designing the school itself, and hence the number of actual entrances into the site for pedestrians. There's 117 car parking spaces in the site, which are for the staff and visitors, with disabled parking as well. And we believe that will be absolutely ample for the purposes of the school. I think we also feel that in terms of the comment about Stanley Street, if you were to park in Stanley Street, it's quite a walk from there down into the school, and I think when there's a more convenient location for them to park on site, they will hopefully choose that.
I'd like to come back.
Staff there are at this school who may have cars. 117 is not a great deal for a school of 1,400 pupils. Pupils bring cars as well. And whatever you may say about drop-off, I have experienced my granddaughters at the high school. I have seen the people picking them up and dropping off, and it is absolute chaos, given the fact that also Duddingston Park, leading up to the lights, and Milton Road, they are all exceedingly busy roads, and especially first thing in the morning when pupils are going to school at 8:30, that road is diabolical. And you will have people dropping off. No matter what you say, people will drop off. And they will park in these streets.
I would reiterate what we said previously, that this was fully assessed through the planning process. Appropriate mitigations, as was considered appropriate by the Transport Authority, would be put in place. And we consider that the parking on site for the school is appropriate in the circumstances.
And if the school was to be built, do you intend to regularly review the parking arrangements for the area?
In terms of the school itself, yes. I mean, if that's something that's wished, then that's something that, if concerns arose out of this, then naturally that is something that the school would keep under review, yes.
The school would, but as the promoter of this bill, I'm asking you specifically if you would do it.
If the committee would wish to do it, then that is something that we would do.
I would like to ask how you would actually intend to make more parking available, because there's very little around in that area. The two narrow streets down the sides, Stanley Street round the bottom, presumably you've got no more room for parking in your school site. Are you going to take more land from the golf course for that?
No, and you know, again, there is no intention to do anything with the golf course or expand the school onto the golf course. I would come back to the same point that transport parking has all been looked at, assessed, and is felt to be appropriate in the circumstances. We obviously hear your concerns, we understand them, but we believe that the measures we're putting in place will deal with everything.
And Convener, if I could just add, I think it's worth reiterating that the bill, as we showed from the plan, does not extend to the golf course. This bill does not authorise any changes being made to the golf course. It doesn't give the power, the council, to do anything with the golf course that it can't do at the moment.
Make the point that the planning application for the boundary of the planning application runs around the entire site. It doesn't make us feel very confident that the council doesn't have plans to possibly, in case it might need to during the process of the school planning and building take a little bit more land?
As I believe we covered in our written submission, the planning application boundary only includes the golf course, as the perimeter footpath improvement works that we talked about before are included in the application. No other reason. The planning permission does not permit any development on the course, and again, as my colleague Mr Livingston just said, the bill does not affect the golf course.
Any further comments on that, or will we move now to number 5, loss of common good protection for the course? Or Jones?
Yes. I've just made the point about the planning application boundary. And I made a point which I see in my original points is not correct. We understood that they were going to construct a goods entrance for the school over the 8th tee, but I can see from the plans that you've given us today that this is not so. I hope you'll confirm this later on. If it was decided that the school building needed to be larger during the course of construction, or perhaps more parking areas, the pitches could be constructed on part of the golf course, this being consistent with its fields in trust status, but in effect destroying the course itself. Although the course currently has fields in trust status, as Roy Martin QC said in his evidence to the Private Bill Committee on the 9th of October, fields in trust protection is merely a private agreement between two parties and does not exist within any formal legal context. It is not the equivalent of inalienable common good status. Moreover, information on the Fields in Trust website makes it clear that that organisation would not oppose Council's plans to develop designated Fields in Trust sites if they can make out a case for it. As the Council's plans were to use the whole park on which to build 2 schools and housing, we have no confidence that they may not revert to this scheme in the future. In 2006, the Council had planned to build, to move the golf course and to build 2 schools on the site and fill it up with housing. We were told that a site for a new golf course had been purchased by the Council, but this subsequently turned out not to be the case. Whilst the housing element appears to have been dropped for now, the Council has never said unequivocally that it will not be revived at some future date. We believe that the development of the school on the adjacent park makes this more likely. That's my...
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Stratton, yep.
Yep, thank you. As we said a few moments ago, in relation to the claim that enacting the bill may somehow lead to the development of the golf course, the response is simple. The bill does not apply to the golf course, and its legal status, including any common good protection, cannot be affected by this purpose. The golf course, as has been mentioned there, is further protected by Fields and Trust status that was conferred upon it in 2012. The Council considers this to be an important safeguard, which is why and it might actually help just now, just if I can make a few further comments in connection with that. We provided further information to the committee in our letter of 20 November regarding a clarification on the Field and Trust status, and we also referred to it in our letter of 31st of January this year. The intention of a Field and Trust status is to ensure continued recreational use and enjoyment of land as park or open space in perpetuity. The dedication comprises a legally binding contract, so it's subject to a law of contract, between the Council and National Playing Fields Association operating as Fields and Trust, and it leaves oversight with an established independent third party which is committed to securing and improving community open space. The National Playing Fields Association is incorporated by Royal Charter. It's a charitable institution founded in 1925 by King George V to ensure that people have access to free local outdoor space for sport, play and recreation. It sits apart from and on top of the planning system and other statutory protections, and would subsist even if there was a change in the law, for example, in respect of common good. In essence, the land affected cannot be used other than as a park, playing field or open space, and cannot be sold, leased or otherwise just developed without the consent of the MPFA. We included in our letter of 20 November 2013 a copy of the agreement which relates to the golf course and other land. The Council has nominated more sites for any other UK landowner when further sites were sought by the MPFA for the status to mark the Queen's Jubilee celebrations. In addition, this legal agreement cannot be varied or discharged without the National Playing Fields Association's consent. I would also add that actually the agreement specifically acknowledges that the course is to be used primarily as a golf course. I would, as regards some of the other points there, I would like to pick up on. We've touched upon the boundary of the planning permission. There are no plans to develop the golf course for any purpose or to expand the school onto it. The leaflet exhibited by the objectors is from March 2006. It was only ever one possibility that might have included the course. It was never a plan. And this predates the Council's decision in December 2006 to build the school on Portobello Park and not to develop the golf course, a point also covered in our written submission for today. The alteration to the second hole, which we can show on the Edinburgh Leisure poster, isn't to accommodate the school building, but rather the pedestrian and cycle path, which will benefit the entire community. The relocation of the green from there to there will be planned and implemented by Edinburgh Leisure, as previously consulted on, with the new green to be in place in advance of the path works being undertaken in order to minimise disruption to the course. The 8th tee in the south, down there, in the southeast corner, southwest one, will not be the subject of any works in connection with the bill. If you can see from the other plan, it's actually indented there, so as to avoid the tee area. So I'm happy to confirm that. I would also add that to give some further assurances, when in December 2006 the Council first approved the park as the site of the new school, this was subject to assurances that no housing would be built on the remaining green space at the golf course or the park. Subsequent reports to Council in December 2008 and March 2010 reaffirmed that the funding strategy for the new school did not rely on any housing being developed on the golf course. I would also add to what we've said previously that I think there's great potential to see playing numbers increase at the course. It's a public course. It's in all our interest that it's viable and succeeds. And we've got great potential for the future members of the club to come from the school. Finally, I would add that although the Council has never sought to formally verify it, I think it is also likely that the course is itself inalienable common good land, and as such could not be sold off without the consent of the courts. As regards any previous proposals to close the course, we understand that was because of low numbers using it. These proposals were put forward to the board of Edinburgh Leisure by officers at Edinburgh Leisure, not by the Council, and it's notable that the board did not support them.
Thank you. Would you like to come back on those points?
Yes, on a couple of them. I'd like to start with asking the promoter why the school doesn't use the golf course already. They already play a competition every year, and they don't play it on Portobello. They go all the way to Craigentinny to play that one. The clubhouse is actually nearer to the school than to the school at the moment than it will be to the new school. So it seems strange to us that the pupils don't use it at the moment. It's such a good facility. It's so near the existing school. The other thing I wanted to ask them was, we wonder why you've persevered for 8 years so far in this strategy, when you could have put a full cohort of pupils through a school on another site. We believe you must have plans for the remaining land. Fields in trust status, I've got their leaflet here from their website. It says that they will allow for recreational purposes and include as appropriate other community uses such as education, culture and heritage. So in fact, under Fields and Trust status, you could in fact put another school on the park. And you could take some extra land for your school playing fields if you needed to to enlarge the area that you have the school on in later years. So it doesn't make us feel very confident, really, that you don't have plans. I mean, you say at this stage in some of your... I've got so much paper here I can't find the bit, but there is somewhere where the council says, at this stage we have no plans for housing or anything else on the golf course. And we know that you're looking for sites for another school, so we are very suspicious as to whether you might want to take another private bill to get rid of the inalienable common good on the golf course and use the Fields and Trust information to put a school on the golf course.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, firstly, if we bring it back, that this process is about a private bill in connection with Portobello Park, and that is all it's concerned with. And if it were to become law, then any powers it makes available would only be in connection with using the site of the park for educational purposes. I'll try and pick up the points in order, if I may. As regards Craig and Tinney, I don't know about the school's golf competition. It may be that they feel a 9-hole golf course isn't suitable for their purposes. As regards the and coming back to a point that I made earlier, we believe that the location next to school is an excellent opportunity to create, special interest, some specialism or something within the school around golf. The council's open space strategy identifies an increase in the number of children participating in golf, and surely this is a fantastic potential to introduce youngsters to the game. The points made as regards closure of the course, I would reiterate what I said previously. There are no intentions to do that, and we would very much hope that the objectors and indeed other interested parties can take sufficient comfort from what we have said previously in terms of that, and also what we have said today around the other protections, and again further that the bill does not cover the course.
Any further comments to those? No. Okay, if I turn to the portal then, if you've any statement to make at this point, and then obviously I will give you an opportunity to question what comes up if you've got anything to say.
Yeah, could you just give me a short moment? I think probably what I would wish to say, convener, is that, and apologies if I go over anything which we've already said or given evidence on this morning. Many of the issues raised, we believe, by the Portobello Golf Course golfers are planning matters. Concerns about drainage, safety, traffic impact were raised by objectors in the planning process and considered by the Council's Development Management Subcommittee in approving both the original planning permission in February 2011 and the renewal of that permission in December 2013. We note that your own preliminary stage report identifies that the committee is obviously conscious that its role is to scrutinise and reach a view on a bill that has been referred to it and not to take over the Council's own role as local planning authority. If I turn to, however, the key reasons why we believe the objectors' concerns are unfounded, the suggestion that pupils will be injured by stray balls, play interrupted, we believe that we are very confident in the proposed risk mitigation measures that we have put forward. We believe that the plans and what we've talked about earlier today demonstrate that. The school will be good neighbours to the golf course and others, takes its responsibility very seriously. It's proud of its responsible behaviour and good citizenship shown by its pupils, and would deal swiftly, firmly, with any issues which arose regarding the golf course. The Council is confident that the measures are appropriate and sufficient to manage the concerns raised about disruption to play, damage to the course, safety to pupils, passers-by. But we would be very happy to engage with any concerned parties who believe otherwise. But the objectors have produced no proposals or suggestions for other mitigation measures that they believe would be more appropriate. In relation to the claim that by enacting the bill may somehow lead to development of the course, I would repeat what we said earlier. The bill does not apply to the golf course. Its legal status cannot be affected by this process. We have already touched upon the Field and Trust status that we have given it, and which we believe is an important step and would provide great additional protection for those that are concerned about this. Again, reiterate, there are no plans to develop the golf course for any purpose or expand the school onto it. As regards parking, with the on-site provision of 117 spaces, we believe it is extremely unlikely that the school would create any competition for parking spaces on Stanley Street, where we believe it's much more likely that golf course users would park, as we previously demonstrated and show on the plans. As regards drainage, this was, again, fully considered in the planning process. A surface water management plan will be put in place, the condition of that process. We are confident that any flooding or drainage issues the course might otherwise experience as a result of the school project will be appropriately mitigated, and again, the objectors have produced no detail why they believe otherwise. Again, we find it difficult to understand how the proposals for the park can be directly linked to a decline in member numbers. And actually, we believe there's a great opportunity here to create real interest and increase playing numbers on the course by the siting of this large school next to the course. And again, the school is very keen to develop a positive and mutually beneficial relationship with the course. We hope that our evidence today will provide the necessary reassurances to objectors and members. We know that you've given up your own personal time to come here, and we're very grateful for that, so that we can address you and the objectors and deal with any concerns that they might raise, because we want to have their support on this proposal. We'd be very happy to answer any further questions.
Do you have any questions on that statement?
No, but I'd just like to say that all our objections could be met happily if the council withdrew from its plan to develop the school right on our borders. Oh yes, I have one question. Do you have any plans to compensate the Common Good Fund for taking this land?
There's a couple of points I would make there. The park will still remain part of the Common Good. The Common Good Fund has not been denied or had the park taken away from it if this bill were to become law. And I don't believe that's in the scope of the bill.
In that, because if you're taking away the inalienable common good status, I understood in this bill.
I'll hand over to Mr Livingston or me in terms of the technicalities.
The Council's view is that the inalienable common good status is not being taken away. The committee has seen the opinion of Jerry Moynihan QC that confirms that. There's a difference of opinion between Mr Moynihan and Roy Martin QC on that issue, but in the Council's view, the bill does not remove the inalienable common good status of the land, and it simply creates an exception to the restrictions that status would otherwise create. So as far as the Council is concerned, notwithstanding that an amendment has been proposed to address any concerns about that, as far as the Council is concerned, the status of the land is not, its essence is not being changed. The bill is simply creating a power for the Council to do something that it would not otherwise be able to do.
Perhaps I should point out that Roy Martin won the last argument that the Council's legal team had over the common good status of the land.
Okay, we're very
sorry,
aware of the history of the bill and why it's in front of the committee at the present time. Is there any further comments before I open to members, if you've got any questions? No? Do members have questions? No. Do the promoter or the objectors have any closing statement they wish to make?
I'd just like to say a couple of short words, if I may, Convener. We do hope that we're being able to satisfy objectors and the committee that the concerns raised by the Group 5 objectors are unfounded. And I would like to bring it back to the fact that the Council firmly believes that there is an urgent need to replace this school, the largest in Edinburgh, which since 2009 we've spent over £2 million on essential repairs to keep it open. The council firmly believes that the park is by far the best location for the new school. This is not a decision taken lightly. There's been extensive assessment of other potential sites. We have inevitably covered rightly in detail today about potential or concerns over impact upon the golf course. But related to that, I would like to say that it is only this site that meets all the requirements for a new school and allows us to provide all curricular PE requirements on site and at the same time create fantastic outdoor sports facilities freely accessible to the local area. I know this isn't about the consultation today, but there were just under 10,000 what we would consider valid responses, and this from the local community, approximately 2/3 of valid responses, where there was 76% support. We believe there is strong support within the local community for the proposals.
Would you like to make any brief closing statement?
No, I'd just like to point out that although the Council has great confidence in all its plans at the moment, it remains to be seen whether the confidence is justified.
Thank you very much for your attendance this morning. That closed the public meeting and we now move into private. Thank you.